Wiretaps leaked. Page 1. The whole Italian league was named in cold, unflinching print. And then, weeks later, the same federation, the same nation, lifted the World Cup in Berlin. Stay with this file. The contradictions are the case. By the end of this case file, you will know how a domestic scandal and a global triumph sat in the same Italian summer, and why, even now, neither cancels the other. Turin, spring 2004. The most decorated club in Italy, Juventus, had a man who listened to every phone. Luciano Moggi, general manager, power broker, shadow referee selector. The room listened when he walked into it. The 2004-05 season had just ended. Juventus had lifted another Scudetto under the floodlights, another name engraved into the cabinet at the club museum. The case was heavy with silver, lined with polish, and decades of presumed innocence. But behind the scenes, Moggi kept a phone book full of the men in black, referees, designators, the officials who chose which whistleblower ran which match. He held their names like currency in a back pocket. He would call, he would suggest, he would not command, never quite command, just a quiet word, placed at the right hour, in the right ear, before a fixture that mattered to the table, and to the men at the top of it. It was not just Juventus. The wiretaps would later show threads running through AC Milan, Fiorentina, Lazio, Regina, a web of soft influence stretched across half the league, half the table, and half the men who lifted silver at season's end. The matches went ahead. The referees were assigned. The results fell. And the league table, week after week, bent toward the men who had placed the calls. The football looked clean from the stands, but the mathematics behind the points did not. But the man on the other end of the line kept the tapes. Months of them. Hours of Moggi's voice, caught in a tone that prosecutors would later call in their dry paperwork undue influence. Hours filed, dated, May 2006. The Italian newspaper La Repubblica publishes the transcripts. Page after page of Moggi's voice and the voices of the men he leaned on. The country reads them in silence over morning espressos and folded broadsheets. The FIGC, the Italian Football Federation, opens a formal inquiry. What had been whispered in car parks for 2 seasons is now written down, dated, and printed in black ink. The whisper is on record. The trophies are ordered off the shelves. The records are rewritten. The cabinet at Juventus is carried out under guard. The silverware treated as if the cups themselves had become evidence in a long-running case the Federation could no longer ignore. Juventus are stripped of the 2004-05 and 2005-06 titles. The championships are not reassigned. They are simply left vacant, a gap in the record where 2 seasons used to sit. 2 silver ghosts on the wall. Juventus are relegated to Serie B, the most successful club in Italy, sent down a division, beginning the next season with a points deduction before a ball is even kicked. Pride, silver, and standing, all confiscated in a single room. AC Milan, Fiorentina, Lazio, Regina, all are hit with point deductions. The whole top half of the table is suddenly, visibly, scarred. The Italian game has been named, photographed, and entered into the public record as broken. Moggi and other Juventus officials are banned from football activity. Phone calls become court exhibits. The shadows over the dugouts are dragged into courtrooms with bright lights and the slow machinery of the Italian legal system. But here is where the case file turns. Before the tapes, before the indictments, before the stadium was searched, Italy had already qualified for the 2006 World Cup in Germany. The plane was booked, the squad was named, the dates were set. The squad was built on the spine of the accused: Cannavaro, Buffon, Del Piero, Nedved, Camoranesi. The Juventus core, the very men whose club had just been disgraced in newspaper ink and courtroom light. Coach Marcello Lippi takes them to Germany anyway. Group E Ghana, the United States, the Czech Republic. The tournament begins on 9 June. 3 weeks after the headlines, 3 weeks after the league fell apart behind closed doors, Italy advanced from the group. Australia in the round of 16, a late Totti penalty. Ukraine next, a 3-0 win. The Juventus spine now playing for a country instead of a club. The badge changing on the shirt. Now, the host nation. The semi-final. Germany in Dortmund. 2 extra time goals. Fabio Grosso opens it. Alessandro Del Piero seals it, late. The kind of goal that ends arguments in the stands and silences the press box for good. Berlin. The Olympia Stadium. 9 July 2006. Italy versus France. The final goes the distance. 1-1 after extra time. Penalties. Italy win the shootout 5-3 and lift their 4th World Cup. The trophy rises under the lights. In the final, Zidane of France is sent off for headbutting Materazzi. Materazzi was reported to have made a verbal provocation. The microphones never quite caught it. The cameras did, in slow, brutal, replay-friendly clarity. Cannavaro is named the tournament's best player. He wins the Ballon d'Or that winter. Buffon wins the Yashin Award for best goalkeeper. Pirlo is named to the team of the tournament. Silver everywhere. Polished clean. Same summer, same federation, same league. One half of Italy dragged into courtrooms. The other half stood on a podium in Berlin, confetti in their hair, the trophy held high. 2 rooms, 1 country. Back home, Juventus returned to Serie A as champions of Serie B in 2006-07. The relegated giant climbs back in 1 season. The scandal, however, does not climb out as quickly. The stain sits longer than the trophy. The criminal trial concludes in 2011. Moggi and the other defendants are given prison sentences. Most are later reduced or annulled on appeal. The law moves slower than the league table and slower than memory. AC Milan, initially docked points and barred from Europe, are readmitted to the Champions League after appeal. Fiorentina, Lazio, and Regina keep their point deductions as their own scars, written into the standings and the memory. It is contested still whether that Berlin run was a symbolic redemption. The players themselves rarely framed it that way. They framed it as a tournament, played in summer, and won. They let others do the myth-making. What is not contested is the calendar. The tapes in May, the relegation in July, the final on 9 July. All of it in the same Italian summer, on the same Italian players, under the same federation, filed and dated. The 2 stories do not cancel each other out. They sit side by side. The league was rotten. The national team rose. Both are recorded. Neither explains the other. The same summer their league was exposed as a fix. Italian players lifted the World Cup. That is the case. Filed. The football files will keep walking the wreckage of football's strangest summers. Next case. A trophy lifted in another empty stadium, and the man who never touched it.